speaker for today is Mr. Nitish Mehra. Sir started his journey in law in 2008 and remains an official law researcher at the Delhi High Court. He has been practicing almost regularly in all the courts of Delhi. Some of his notable cases include the Baby Farah case, and he remains in close association with the Samjhauta Blast case. Several of his civil and criminal cases have been reported in the newspapers. Being a first-generation lawyer, Sir has ensured that his hard work leads him to greater heights. Now, I request Sir to begin with his lecture. Over to you, Sir.
Thank you, Akansha, for the wonderful introduction which you have given. From here onwards, I am starting. Good afternoon, everyone. And today I'll be taking you through the provisions of, I think everybody can see this PowerPoint screen. Is it visible to everyone?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yeah, sir, it's visible.
Today what we will be talking about Section 138 of the Negotiable Instrument Act, which was enacted in the year 1881. And what would be the main crux of the today's lecture is the insight of the provisions. We are not going today more into the procedures, but we will be dealing with the insight of the provisions of Section 138 and the presumptions and rebuttals as it has been provided in Section 139, 118, and which is in the favor of the complainant. So starting from this, now I'm taking you on to the second slide. So if you see, what is a check? So a check is basically a method, it's a bill of exchange which is drawn or specified banker and not expressed to be payable otherwise on demand. And if we say what is holder in due course, it means any person who accept the pay become the possessor of the promissory note bills of exchange, then that person becomes the holder in due course. Why I need to tell these two provisions basically, that firstly you have to understand what is the check known as an instrument and who is holder in due course, because in the later part of this lecture we would be using this term holder in due course a lot. So now we have to see what is the object of Section 138. 138 was basically brought to include the faith in the efficacy of the banking operations and provide credibility in transacting business on the negotiable instruments. The penal provision in 138 was intended to be brought as a deterrent for the casual issuance of check. So one should not, as a matter of prudence, should not issue their blank checks having their signatures on that. One should be very vigilant in drawing a check to anybody. The third thing which we are taking up now is that what is the crux of Section 138? So Section 138 basically says that the check is basically drawn for a consideration in lieu of a debt or for some other liability. And the check, the validity of the check, which was earlier 6 months, has now been amended and the check's validity is of 3 months only. But you can present this check within the period of 3 months as many as times you want it. There is no bar to that. So what you should do after the dishonor of the check? So a simple thing which has to be done by you is you have to send a notice to drawer, and that has to be sent to him within 30 days of the knowledge received from the bank, and what you call it as a demand notice. A demand notice is sent to the drawer giving him 15 days time to pay. And if the noticee, or we say the drawer of the check, is not able to pay within the 15 days time, then from the 16th day, the cause of action to file the complaint within 30 days from the 16th day after the completion of 15 days starts. So ideally, the offense is completed on the failure of the drawer of the check in not paying the check amount within the stipulated period of 15 days. So if we go and if we understand as a matter of fact that bouncing or dishonor of check is not an offense, but when you do not pay after the demand notice, then the cause of action arises for filing of the complaint. So I have written a formula to calculate is generally there is a lot of confusion that how many days, how much time. So I say it, I put it in a simply numerical terms, 30, 15, 30. So either within 30 days you have to send the demand notice, then you have to send a demand notice of 15 days, and after the 16th day, within next 30 days, you can file a complaint under section 138. So now there is one explanation which has been appended to this section 138. It says the debt for the purposes of section 138 means a legally enforceable debt which is enforced by the operation of law. So there are various reasons for dishonor of check. If we see on the screen, it says insufficiency of funds, stop payment, exceeds arrangement, signature differs, account closed, account blocked, account frozen, check overridden, death, lunacy or insolvency of the drawer. There may be other reasons which the bank to bank have their own returning memos, but these are the very common reasons which comes for the dishonor of check. So now we come to straight away to section 139. This is a very important section in section 138 proceedings because it lays down a presumption in favor of a holder of a check. So it either may be a person to whom the check has been given, that means a payee, or it may be a holder in due course. This section 139's presumption would apply to both of them. So the word shall, which has been used in section 139, has been inserted with full force by the legislature. The intention of the legislature was to protect the sanctity of the negotiable instruments to whomsoever it has been issued by the drawer of the check. Basically, to give a full force to it, it was intended to have a full force of word shall. If you see, there has been 2-3 times this word shall has been used in section 139. So now the presumptions are also under section 118 of the Negotiable Instruments Act and 139 of the Negotiable Instruments Act in favor of the holder of the check until the contrary is proved. So until the contrary is proved means that the rebuttal has to be made by the accused that it was not issued for any in discharge of any liability or debt. And another presumption which we takes from the Evidence Act is section 114C, which says even a bill that a bills of exchange has been endorsed for good consideration. Generally we go with section 118 and 139 presumption, but we overlook section 114C of the Indian Evidence Act, which is also a presumption, which is also in relation to a good consideration of a bills of exchange. So presumption under section 118 is little different from section 139 because of the proviso appended to that section. So what the proviso says, that if the drawer proves that the check has been obtained from his custody by way of offense and fraud or unlawful consideration, the burden shifts onto the payee to prove that the holder is a valid holder in due course. Now you would be thinking that what is the meaning of this? So the literal meaning of this is that check whenever has been given to a payee, that has to be given properly, and it does not mean that somebody has stolen it or that there is an FIR which has been lodged. So in all probabilities, it should not be obtained by way of a fraud, or it should not be an unlawful consideration. So now I am continuing to section 139, that what is this presumption and how it is go about. So basically the presumption under section 139 is not of such a nature which cannot be rebutted. So this presumption is rebuttable. Accused, how it has to be rebutted? Accused can rebut it without even entering into the witness box and through the cross-examination of the prosecution or the complainant's witnesses. It is not necessary for the accused to himself appear in the witness box as under section 315 CRPC, and he made himself available for the cross-examination. So now, although the complainant does not stand completely absolved from liability of showing the legality of issuance of the check, so 139 and 118 though lays down a very strong presumption in favor of the holder of the check, but at the same time it does not absolve the complainant completely from telling that the check has been issued legally. And however, existence of a legally, so what is important to note here, that what the presumption which 139 raises. So existence of a legally enforceable debt is not a matter of presumption under section 139. It merely raises a presumption in favor of the holder of the check that the same has been issued in discharge of any debt or other liability. So if you relate back to the explanation appended to section 138, that says that a debt has to be a legally enforceable debt. So our understanding of section 139 is this, that debt is only presumed to be for the discharge. So the next point which we will be taking is the defenses were generally taken. So this man, if you see in the picture, he is like feeling very helpless that what should I do? So the defenses which may not be allowed in any prosecution under section 138, no general or vague defense is available to the drawer of a check in one.
Hello, Nitesh. Though. Hello. I think there's some technical glitch. Just give me a minute, please.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Now you are.
Just wait. I'm just
Yeah.
seeing the sharing of the screen. So yes. So now the question arises that what is the stage at which the drawer, innocent drawer, has to take a defense? So this question basically came in this important, I may say very important judgment. This is the only judgment which describes that at what stage what has to be said by the drawer of the check. So this Electronic Trade and Technology Corporation versus Indian Technologies and Engineers, AIR 1996, SCW 840. What has been said in this case that a defense which has to be raised by the drawer, it has to be seen that suppose after the check is issued to the payee or the holder in due course and before it is presented for encashment. So note here, the important stage is before it is presented for encashment, notice is issued to him. Who is him? Him is the payee. Not to present the same for encashment, and yet the payee or holder in due course presents the check to the bank for payment, and when it is returned on instructions, section 138 does not get directed. So this is the only judgment, landmark judgment, which tells that when it has to be raised. So now section 141. This section 141 is in relation to the offenses by companies. So if an check bounce has been done on behalf of a company or a check is issued on behalf of a company and it gets dishonored, so then in what manner it has to be dealt with, section 141 says about the same. So it provides the vicarious liability in cases of offenses by company. Any person for that sake who at the time of the offense was in charge for company for the conduct of the business of the company, any director, manager, secretary or other officer, such person shall also be deemed to be liable to be proceeded against. No, now here one thing is very important. Section 141 says that there are certain judgments which clearly tell that how it has to be pleaded. So you have to specifically plead in your complaint that persons so and so to so and so mentioned in your memo of parties while filing the 138 complaint were in day-to-day in charge of the affairs of the company, and they were having full knowledge of the issuance of this check which got dishonored. So by writing this in your pleadings, you will be including all of those persons against whom you have lodged the prosecution under section 138. So earlier there were certain developments of law, and MMs were just going with a pragmatic approach that there should be one particular form, that is form number 32 shall be filed along with the complaint, then only the court will issue the summons. But however, in the judgment of A.K. Singhania versus Gujarat State Fertilizers Company Limited 2013 4 JCC NI 226, it's a Supreme Court judgment. It clearly said no particular form is required for the prosecution of the directors. Let me tell you very frankly, there are numerous number of the even MMs who are not aware of this judgment, and we as a lawyer have to do the research, we have to take the judgments along, and just tell them that it's not the law. The law has not been now been devolving upon, and it has now devolved upon by the virtue of this judgment. So now what is the proviso to this section 141? Proviso says a person who is in charge of day-to-day affairs of the company, if able to show that the offense has been committed without his knowledge, he has to done. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Yes. So what this proviso says, that any person who has now been arraigned as an accused by virtue of section 141, and they have to tell that they have done their all due diligence to prevent the commission of this offense under section 138. Therefore, they do not fall under any liability under this act. And for this purpose, the judgment which has to be referred is Anita Hada versus Godfather Travel.
Nitish sir, am I audible to you?
Yeah, you are audible, Siddhi.
I think
So-
there's some damage.
So,
Yes, sir, please
there
you
is-
may continue.
am I audible to everyone?
Yes,
Am I
sir.
audible?
Yep.
Okay. So now it says that section 142, cognizance of offences. So a cognizance means where a judge has applied its mind to the facts of the case. So the word cognizance has not been defined either in Negotiable Instruments Act or in CRPC. But the word cognizance has one very literal meaning, which clearly says that application of mind by the court to the facts of the case. So now in this 138 prosecution, the court can only take the cognizance under section 142 on a complaint made in writing by the payee or holder in due course. And that complaint has to be made within 30 days of the origin of the cause of action, as I've already told you in the beginning of this session under section 138. And now what the proviso says? Proviso says that it gives power to the court by way of amendment 2002, where the court can now condone the delay in filing 138 complaint case by way of application by the complainant. But that delay has to be properly condoned, and the reason should be very justifiable, that why you would not have been able to file this complaint within the period of 30 days. So as I have also came across one case where I had filed that case and it got beyond the 30 days period. So what has happened in that case, that during that time my office was got burnt. There was a short circuit. So I took the photographs and I provided to the court, and court, while considering the same, that the same is a very genuine reason, court had condoned the delay in filing the complaint under section 138. Now, who has the power to deal with the cases of section 138? The Court of Metropolitan Magistrate and the Court of Chief Judicial Magistrate in the other states of the first class shall have the sole power to deal with the cases of 138 Act. Now, it is important to tell you here that there is no pecuniary jurisdiction which has been prescribed for in the code for the 138. There is no limit on the amount of the checks under which the prosecution can go within the before the Metropolitan Magistrate. So
Sir, your voice is not audible.
Siddhi, can you look at it? Host, can you please look at it? They're saying my voice is not audible. Am I audible to all now?
Yes, sir, now you are.
Okay, thank you so much, Siddhi. So,
Yes,
section 142.2, what it says that the judgment K. Bhaskaran versus Shankaran Vaidyan. So, in this judgment, what has happened, that you can file the cases at 5 places. This was a leading judgment on the jurisdiction, which was 1999 SAC Criminal 1284. Thereafter, this judgment was overruled by the judgment of Dashrath Roop Singh Rathore versus State of Maharashtra. in that case, what the Supreme Court has done, that they said that where the accused reside, that would be the sole place of jurisdiction in 138 cases. So after that, there was a lot of chaos in the society, and the law was then amended by the Parliament in 2015 by, you can say, overruling the judgment of 3-judge bench, that the jurisdiction will be in the first instance of the place where the payee resides or holder in due course maintained its bank account. So the position for the jurisdiction was thus clarified by virtue of this amendment. So now section 143. So section 143 is basically
Nitesh sir, hello. Really sorry
called
for the inconvenience. Sir, I'll just have to interrupt you for a second. Sir, I think there is some technical error that is coming again and again, and you aren't audible.
So your
am I audible?
Your
There
voice
is a slight, yeah, the voice is not clear, and I think,
Am I audible now?
yes, sir, you are at the moment,
yes, sir.
Okay.
but you are not visible.
So you're not visible.
I think that host has to see. Host,
Yes,
can
sir,
you
now
just,
you are. Yes, sir,
so
now you are visible.
yeah, I am again starting from section 143. So 143, it prescribes the procedure in which manner the cases under section 138 has to be dealt. So the procedure is provided in section 251 to 258 of CRPC, to which we generally say is a summary procedure. So except this 138, the summary procedure are also being used in order 37 cases of CPC, and summary procedure is also used where we filed section, we say section 14 petition in Delhi Rent Control Act for the eviction of the tenants. So this summary procedure, I am not going into much, but I am simply saying that it has to be disposed of as quickly as possible, as it has been laid by the Supreme Court time to time, again and again. So now what has happened in section 143, it got amended in 2018, and for giving one more favor to the complainant, there was a power of interim to what the interim compensation was added. So what this interim compensation was, this interim compensation cannot be exceed the 20% of the check amount in any case. And for bringing this interim compensation, there has to be an application which has to be filed by the complainant, and this interim compensation basically given in 2 cases, where the charge is framed or where the accused has pleaded not guilty. Basically now in the frivolous defenses or the frivolous cases where you will see that the checks has been casually issued and their amount is a little more, now the accused will have a deterrence, and they have a fear that now in order to get a right to cross-examine the complainant, they have to first deposit the interim compensation amount. So for procedure of recovering this interim compensation is prescribed in section 143A only, which says it shall be paid within 60 days of the date of the order, and the interim compensation can also be recovered by the court under section 421 CRPC. And if the drawer of the check is acquitted, in that case complainant has to return the amount received by him by way of interim compensation as the rate which is fixed by the RBI or the prevalent. The amount of fine so provided under section 138 is same as compensation under section 357 of CRPC. So one very important thing to tell you here, that this section 143A does not have any retrospective effect. So from the date of the amendment, after that, whatever cases have been filed, only in those cases section 143A would be applicable. And if any case which was pending in the on the date of the amendment, to that it would not be applicable. So now I am coming to section 144, mode of service of summons. Now everybody knows that how the summons can be served. There are various ways, but where it has to be served, where the accused resides, where there is an acknowledgement received or where the accused refused the service of summons, it is known as deemed delivered. Now, one important thing which has also been added in the service of delivery of summons in 138 is that now door locked, intimation served, not claimed, return to sender is also be deemed to be delivered by way of the judgment, which is Muniraj versus T. Vishwanath. The citation is given in the slideshow. I think you can note it down from there. And now, in 2014, only Supreme Court in Indian Bank Association and others versus Union of India and others held that magistrates should adopt a pragmatic and realistic approach while issuing the process to ensure the presence of the accused. By virtue of this judgment, even summons through email was allowed. Yeah, now coming to
Nitesh sir, are you there with us? Hello. Sir, am I audible to you? Sir, hello.
am I audible?
Yes, sir. Now you are.
Actually, there was some net related problem, I think. So,
So you just completed. Hello.
yeah, tell me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Can you please start that again?
I was on section 145, right?
Yeah, 145, right?
Yeah, so though it is written in section 145 that an evidence has to be brought by way of affidavit, but there is a judgment of Supreme Court again which says that accused has an indispensable right to have the right of cross-examination in criminal cases. That is Mandvi Cooperative Bank versus Nimesh B. Thakur. The citation is there, and the right of cross-examination in criminal cases is given there. The presentation is not available, kya?
No, sir.
No, sir.
So I'm just telling you from here onwards. I think some net related problem is here. So it says Mandvi Cooperative Bank Limited versus Nimesh B. Thakur, and in that case, it has been held that the right of cross-examination is available with every person who is accused in the criminal case. So now thereafter, I jump to section 147, which says that these offenses under section 138 are basically compoundable, and there are stages which were laid down by the judgment of Damodar S. Prabhu versus Syed Babalal H. You can note down the citation 2010 5 SCC 663. So in that judgment, it was held that if the application for compounding is made at first or second hearing, then there would be no cost which would be imposed on the accused. And thereafter, if the application is made before the magistrate at a later stage, maybe say that after the second or third or fourth hearing, then accused will have to pay 10% of the check amount to the legal services authority. Thereafter, if it is made before the session court or the high court, then accused will have to pay 15% of the check amount with the legal services authority. And if lastly, if application is made before the Supreme Court, then amount of cost is increased from 15 to 20%. So what was the purpose of bringing these guidelines for the compounding in the judgment of Damodar S. Prabhu was basically to create an effect of deterrence among the accused to avoid the delay of compounding of an offense, considering the fact that the recovery of debt is main motive and not seeing a drawer in the jail. The vacuum created by legislatures in section 147 creates an advantage to the accused to use compounding as a last resort. Thus, the trend of judgment is to make accused pay not only the check amount, but for extended litigation and to ensure the expeditious litigation. So now section 148. Now I will tell you here that the two sections which were basically added in the amendment of 2018, one was the 143A and second is 148, where the appellate court can ask the appellant drawer to deposit 20% of the compensation during the pendency of the appeal. And this has the same procedure as it is laid down in section 143, that it has to be paid by the appellant within 60 days. So now there have been a judgment of Supreme Court in this regard, which clearly states that section 148 would have a retrospective effect. So this was a landmark judgment of Surinder Singh Deswal, SS Deswal and others versus Virender Gandhi. And the citation of the judgment is 2019 8 scale 445. So by virtue of this judgment, it was clarified that section 148 would be having a retrospective effect. So you understand by now that section 143A will not have a retrospective effect, but section 148 would have a retrospective effect. Now I am on to one very important issue. Now the procedure, as far as the procedure is concerned, we have already done with this insight of the provisions of section 138. Of the NI Act and their rebuttals. So what is the general tendency to file the check bounces cases in case of a friendly loan? What does friendly loan means? So in my literal meaning of friendly loan means any lending of money to someone based solely on the mutual trust between the two parties. Often
So your voice is not clear.
Nitesh sir, you'll have to start this friendly loan topic again. Hello?
okay.
Your voice is not.
Am I
Yes, sir,
audible
you
now,
give me-
Siddhant? Am I audible, Siddhant?
Sir,
Yes,
you
sir.
are. You are.
Yes, sir.
So yes, the most I was saying the most confusing issue which arises in several cases pending in courts in relation to friendly loans are the presumptions under section 118 and 139 of the NI Act and their rebuttals. So what I was saying that there is a general tendency to file the check bounce cases in the matter of friendly loan.
Nitesh sir, hello. Nitesh sir, am I audible to you?
Yes, you are audible.
Sir, but actually, I think there is some network error at your end. So at the moment, we're not able to see you and you're not audible clearly. Your voice is lagging.
Is it so?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Just wait for a second. Visible to everyone? Am I
Yes,
audible?
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I was basically on the definition of this friendly loan in my terms. So the definition of friendly loan is that a friendly loan entails lending of money to someone based solely on mutual trust between the two parties. Often these parties end up in being friendly relatives, and majority of time the money lent is undocumented with no specific repayment agreement without any paperwork. The stipulations are often only verbally decided and undefined and indeterminate conditions, because of which it becomes very difficult to ensure that whether the loan was friendly loan was actually given or not given. So now thereafter, what is the problem? How the problem arises? The problem arises when during the course of transaction, blank checks are issued with trust but end up being misused by the other party under the guise that it is a friendly loan. Since it was a friendly loan, no paperwork is done to prove that the money which has been withdrawn as cash has not been authorized. Since the burden of proof that the check was not issued as a legally enforceable debt always falls upon the accused, the main fight lies in proving the contrary and discharging this burden. It's a huge burden which has to be discharged properly. So the bar in giving a loan more than rupees 20,000 is there in section 269XX of the Income Tax Act, which prohibits
I'm not audible. Your voice is not audible, sir.
I'm really not have any idea. Am I audible now?
No, sir.
Yeah, sir, but there's a lot of disturbance that is coming.
Yes, sir.
Is it clear now?
No,
No,
sir.
sir. No, sir. It's break.
Wait for, just wait for 1 minute. I just check with the tech.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Now you are.
I am sharing the screen also. I think now the net problem is also resolved. So the screen is visible now. PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So now this is what I was talking about, that how the problem arises. So the problem is basically with regard to the party who received it. For that, there is no problem of receiving the check, but the party who has issued it, there is no paperwork, there is no documentation. So always there is a problem arises. And I said that there is a bar under the Income Tax Act, which has to be seen while giving a friendly loan more than rupees 20,000 in cash. So now even the Punjab Money Lenders Act 1938, this was always several times which has been raised as a defense by the several defense counsels in the case of section 138, that the person who does not have the license under Punjab Money Lenders Act, or who is not a money lender, then whether that person is entitled to give a loan in cash. So this question came before consideration before the High Court, and the High Court decided 24 appeals together in the case of Virinder Singh versus Deepak Bhatia, 2013 2 DLT, Criminal 672, where it was clearly held that Punjab Money Lenders Act has no applicability for lending of friendly loans. Appeals against all the acquittals were allowed, and decision of acquitting the accused on these grounds were set aside. So now I am coming to the judgments part. So what is the law, how it devolved, and now what is the situation in section 138 with regard to presumption rebuttal and in the cases of friendly loans. So now taking the very first judgment is Rangappa versus Shri Mohan 2010 11 SCC 441. This was again a landmark judgment in the section 138. In this, 3-judge bench overruled the judgment of Krishna Janardhan Bhatt, because the Krishna Janardhan Bhatt judgment used to say that a person does not have the power to give loan above rupees 20,000 in view of the bar of 269SS, but the court overruled it and again applied the forceful section 139. And in this case, Supreme Court laid down that the section 139 of the NI Act lays down a presumption that there exists a legally enforceable debt, which can be rebutted by the accused by cross-examining the complainant and the witnesses brought by the complainant. Now, latest development in law. What has happened after the Sri Rangappa's judgment? Now this K. Subramani versus Damodara Naidu, this judgment came, just hold for a second. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you're audible.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And you can see this slide, latest development in law, K. Subramani versus K. Damodara Naidu. This is 2015 1 SEC 99. In this case, Supreme Court laid down that Section 139 of NI Act, there is a presumption that there exists a legally enforceable debt which can be rebutted by the accused, and the accused was acquitted in the present case. Now, let me discuss a little about the facts of this case. That in this case, the complainant said that he has given an amount of rupees 14 lakhs in cash as a friendly loan to the accused. So, court came to the conclusion that complainant had no source of income to lend a sum of rupees 14 lakhs to the accused, and he failed to prove that there is a legally enforceable debt payable by the accused to him. In this case, the appeal was allowed, and the imputed judgment insofar as the appellant is concerned is set aside, and the judgment of acquittal passed by the trial court was resolved. So what was the careful scrutiny done in this case was that the apex court, in the unique facts and circumstances of the case, has concluded that the complainant has failed to prove that there is a legally enforceable debt in his favor, inter alia, because he had ostensibly no source of income to lend the substantial sum rupees of 14 lakhs to the accused. So now here you have to understand that the law which started developing was from this K. Subramani judgment, now which the defense counsels also use a lot, that where the complainant does not able to show that he has source to pay the amount, then only because there is a presumption in section 139, the judgment should not go in his favor. Now, thereafter, coming to the judgment of ANSS Rajshekhar versus Augusta Jeba Anand, 2019, Criminal Law Journal 1498. So again, I will be telling you the dates of this judgment. You may kindly note it down because it would be very important for us for the part of discussion. This judgment was decided on January 18, 2019. So in this case, it was held that in the absence of any compelling justifications, reverse onus clause usually imposes an evidentiary burden and does not have a persuasive burden. Keeping in this view, it is a settled position that when an accused has to rebut the presumption under section 139, the standard of proof which is laid down is that of preponderance of probabilities and not beyond reasonable doubt. So he has to only raise the presumptory defense. Therefore, if the accused is able to raise a probable defense which creates doubt in the story of the complainant, the existence of legally debt or the ability of the prosecution can fail. Again, in this judgment also, a sum of 15 lakhs was given as alleged by the complainant to the accused as a friendly loan. So, but the court held that the defense of the appellant that he has not borrowed the amount of 15 lakhs from the complainant as alleged, nor he had issued the check in discharge of legally enforceable debt. Specifically, the defense of the accused is that no payment was made by the complainant to him in discharge of the checks have been issued. So his defense was constant, and in the same case, again the complainant was not able to show that he have the capacity to pay the sum of rupees 15 lakhs, and the accused was again acquitted in this case. And though the Sri Rangappa's judgment was discussed, and the court held that the appellant has duly rebutted the presumption under section 139 of the Act, his defense that there was an absence of legally enforceable debt was rendered probable on the basis of material on record, and consequently he was acquitted. So what is a material on record? So material on record always come by way of the cross-examination of the complainant by the counsel of the accused. So that is the only way after the you fail before the presentation of the check for raising a probable defense. So now, after this judgment, there was an am I audible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
thank you so much. This Basalinga's judgment was again came in 2019. Now, if you see all these three judgments which I am dealing with has a constant view of the Supreme Court that once the check is drawn, the complainant has presented it, there is one duty which is casted upon the complainant also to prove the source from which he is lending such a huge amount of cash to the accused against which he has presented the check in question. So now in the Basalingappa's judgment also, that it was held in para 29 that High Court, without discarding the evidence which was led by the defense, could not have finding the trial courts regarding financial capacity of the complainant is perverse. We are thus satisfied that the accused has raised a probable defense and the findings of the trial court that the complainant failed to prove his financial capacity based on evidence led by the defense. The observation of the High Court that findings of the trial court are perverse are unsustainable. Again, the accused was acquitted. Now, the date of this judgment you may also again note down, that is April 9, 2019. So there were certain guidelines which has been laid down as it is there in my PPT presentation. And if you see the point 4, it is not necessary for the accused to come in the witness box in the support of his defense. In section 315 CRPC, section 139 imposed an evidentiary burden and not a persuasive burden. So it is not necessary for the accused to come in the witness box to discharge this burden. And now this is the most important judgment which I now want to deal with you, that there are conflicting views which are leaving doubts on the advocates, defense counsels, or the persons who are studying the law, that what is the actual law. Now this Bir Singh's judgment came in between the Basalingappa's judgment and ANSS Rajshekhar's judgment. The date of this judgment was February 6, 2019. Now, this is the Supreme Court judgment. I have laid down certain facts you may see from the PPT that High Court has set aside the judgment of trial court. It was a case of friendly loan of 15 lakhs was given as alleged. The Supreme Court held that whether the complainant was an income tax practitioner or not does not make any difference. The Supreme Court applied the presumption of section 118 and 139 in full force and negated the judgment of High Court and acquittal of accused on the ground of the fact that whether the friendly loan was given in cash or not by the check DD, no receipt has been obtained in this regard. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Supreme Court applied both these provisions, and so what we gather from this judgment is that complainant is not even accountable to tell whether such money was an unaccounted cash or not, and if it was, then also it is legally enforced if the blank check leaf is there with the pay. So the judgment, in my view, I say it per incurium, left many questions undecided as to what should be the probable defense, then in what way it has to be cross-examined, because the earlier judgment, if you see, of the 2015 and thereafter the judgment in 2019 January, both these judgments were not taken into consideration by the Supreme Court while dealing with the judgment of Bir Singh, because in Bir Singh's judgment, court only went on to the presumption of 139, even though complainant was cross-examined on the part of the source. Little facts I may tell about Bir Singh's case, that in Bir Singh's case, the complainant was an income tax practitioner and the accused was his client. So he presented the check of rupees 15 lakhs, and then the court said, no, it is not for the complainant to tell from where he has brought the money. So in my view, to that extent, there is a conflicting view of the other judgments which the Supreme Court shall have taken into the consideration while passing these judgments, or the counsels therein should have rendered the necessary assistance to the Supreme Court, that there are other judgments to that effect which says that unaccounted cash cannot be legally enforced when there is no source of money, there is no receipt, there is no agreement. But the Supreme Court went on to the fact that no, 118 and 13 are sufficient, and therefore the presumption is not rebutted by the accused and he got convicted. So in my view, the presumption under section 118 and 139 though gives unfettered power in the holder in due course, or payee, but at the same time, a check is put by the Supreme Court even through the judgment of Sri Rangappa by stating that said presumption is rebuttable in nature. Rebuttal is a matter of debate amongst various judges and their judgments. It had conflicting views in different interpretations over the time. So in my view, this is my view, this is not written anywhere. After reading and going through the entire provisions and the judgments in this regard, I see that legislature needs to amend section 139 in a way to provide some relief to the accused who are innocent. But at the same time, I am also going to say that the enactment of NI Act was done to protect the sanctity of the check, as I said in the beginning of this lecture. Now, what is the last development? What has happened? Can you see the last slide? Last development in the law?
Yes, sir.
All of you can now happened in 2020. So here I am concluding the RBI, in view of the latest judgment of Supreme Court in Makwana Mangaldas Tulsidas versus State of Gujarat 2020 SCC Online 137, the Supreme Court suggested that RBI should consider developing a new performa. This is something really wonderful which the Supreme Court has done. Creating of a new performa of checks which includes purpose of payment. This is a step which the court appoint would increase credibility of the checks and prevents its misuse. So the view which I was taking, that there should be some amendment, I think by way of this judgment, they had fill in that lacuna. And besides, with a view to speed up the trial of the accused in check bounce cases under section 138 of the NI Act, which fastens criminal liability for check bouncing, also asked banks to consider developing an information sharing mechanisms to share the details of the accused with the complainant and the police. So the RBI has welcomed the said opinion of the Supreme Court, and the RBI governor has invited various authorities and the institutions to provide the new performa of the check, which though now got stopped due to the lockdown, and as the decision on the same has not been taken. And I think as soon as the lockdown is open, the decision on this would also be taken up. So with this, I am thanking all of you for giving a patient hearing in this webinar and lecture on the 138. And if there are any questions, Siddhi, I think you can take it up, or if you see in the chat box.
Yes, so there are certain questions that have been posted by the people.
So if you can ask the listeners also to raise them one by one, I am having no problem in that also. I can answer them.
Okay, sir, I'll do that. So, good afternoon, everyone. I would request everyone who's posted the questions in the chat box to unmute themselves, and if you can ask the questions directly to Nitesh, sir, please. Thank you.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah, myself, Dr. Chandrasekhar. Hello.
Yes, Chandrasekhar,
Yes,
sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir, I can.
Yeah, Nitesh, I have a question. First of all, I compliment you for presenting a very elaborate presentation. I have a question that don't you feel...
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, don't you feel that the section 138 has lost its importance of late because the one case takes years to get finally decided, and the cases are more or less governed like the civil cases? Yeah.
Yes, sir, definitely. I am in complete agreement with you that over the years, even though there has been repeated judgments by the Supreme Court, High Court in different cases, yes, that this is a summary procedure, it has to be speedy disposal, but the courts are again taking a pragmatic approach to not to decide it and giving a long dates of 8 months, and again making the procedure same as that of the civil cases. So yes, you are right to that extent, that people are now losing faith to that extent. But I now think since this judgment of 2020, I think this would be bringing some radical changes in the check bounce cases. I hope so that now again there should be a speedy disposal of check bounce cases which are now been pending for since years.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Can we have the next question, please?
Sir, what in case if the sign is not matching onto the check, then what remedy is available for the victim?
For the accused, yes, it's a very good question which you has taken up, that means the signature differs. So there may be sometimes the cases that there was a check with someone and they have tried to inculpate the signatures of the drawer, and then it got signature differs, and then again it become a stigma for the accused how to defend it. So in that case, you have 2-3 remedies which you can get, that you can bring in your defense witnesses as an handwriting expert. You can have your signature compared from that you have not done. You can call the bank witness to say that in past you have never signed with these signatures and that you have never signed it, and then because of that you would raise a probable defense, and that probable defense would definitely go stand in the court.
Okay, sir. And next question is like, what is a guarantee check? Like sometimes multiple checks are issued, like one by one person, another says that I guarantee that this payment will be done. Otherwise, you can go ahead and use my check. So what is the sanctity of the second check which is issued for the same goods?
Yeah, I understand your question. This guarantee check was again, there was some judgment of Vipin Sanghi sir on that. I'll tell you the citation if you can email me this question. This question was taken care of, and it was held that this part would go in any or others liability. So the others liability part would be taking this guarantee checks also, and in that case the person who has issued the guarantee checks also, then that person would also have the same liability as the person who is issuing the check.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions, Siddhi?
Yeah, sir, I see a couple of questions in the chat box. So just a second. So there is a question by Amit George sir, and he says, is there a specific judgment dealing with the prospective or retrospective nature of the newly inserted section 143A and 148?
The judgment which I have tell for the 148, it does also include 143A also. So you can look that judgment only. It says about the non-retrospective effect of section 143A, and the same judgment says that the retrospective effect of 148. That judgment is a very elaborative judgment, including and telling about both the provisions. Section 143A as well as 148, which has been included by way of amendment 2018.
Yes, sir. Sir, people are requesting if you may please upload the presentation as well.
I upload the presentation. For that, they have to leave their email to me. Kindly note down my email or WhatsApp to me. My email is advniteshmehra@gmail.com, and my WhatsApp number is 9953652710. I again repeat, my email is advniteshmehra@gmail.com, and my WhatsApp number is 9953652710.
Sir, can you please repeat it? Sir, can you please repeat the number? Sorry, sir.
It's 9953652710.
Sir, can I ask you a question, sir, ma'am?
Yeah, please.
Yes, sir, please.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. I want to thank you for taking your precious time, sir.
No problem.
Sir, can I ask you? Sir, can I ask you a question, sir?
Yeah, please go ahead. Go ahead.
Sir, I just want to ask you one thing, sir. Sir, what if the complainant and the accused settle the matter in the mediation? Sir, my voice is clear, sir? Sir, if the complainant and the accused, sir, if the complainant and the accused settle the matter in the mediation court, and the accused, sir, for example, and the accused don't follow the terms and condition of the mediation, so what is the remedy for the left for the complainant, sir? Sir, thank you. Thank you, sir.
So mediation is basically an independent voluntary process which you cannot connect with the procedure of the court. So yes, okay, it has certain drawbacks. Sometimes they also go away and they do not get restricted to the terms which they have settled in the mediation. That has happened in the mediation cases a lot of times. But in that scenario, it is important for the complainant that while sitting in the mediation, he should get recorded the term. He should get recorded the term that in case if accused fail to repay the amount as decided by him in the mediation, then there should be some default clause.
Yes, sir.
Unless the case would re-begin
Okay,
from
sir.
the stage where it was left. So it is for the complainant or his counsel to be remaining very vigilant while deciding the mediation terms. Because otherwise it becomes very difficult when the mediation terms are noted and you does not have this default clause noted. Then the court says that it was upon you to get it noted at that time.
At the time of the mediation, sir.
Yeah. During the time if the case is getting settled and the mediation terms are getting recorded. So
Okay,
those have to be seen very carefully.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
There was one question from Yamini also. Yamini, yes, you can ask
Yes,
me.
sir.
Yes, Yamini.
Yes, I have a question that what is the remedy for the complainant in a case where complaint gets dismissed in default? In case of prior to notice or after later on the notice was
Dismiss in default, I
Hello?
didn't got you. On the basis of what? That the complainant not appears or like what? I'm not able to get your question.
Yes, the complainant didn't appear before the court.
So when the complainant didn't appear before the court, it get dismissed. You always have a revision lies.
Okay, sir.
I'm so sorry.
Nitesh sir, I have a question myself.
I'm so sorry. It's not revision. You have to prefer an appeal because dismissal in default in complainant's case in 138 would render the accused acquitted. So you have to file an appeal under section 378 subclause 4 and you have to seek a leave from Honorable High Court. So I just take my words on the revision back. This is the correct provision. 378(4) you have to prefer an appeal, leave against acquittal. So as a matter of right, appeal for the complainant is not a matter of right in 138 case. You have to seek a leave.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Sir.
There was another question. Siddhi, the last question I think we shall take up.
Yes, sir. I was just asking that can you please elaborate on the premature complaint? Like people who filed the 138 complaint before the before the 30 days limitation period, and the complaint is dismissed as premature, and then the advocates forgets about it and maybe is sir, am I audible?
Yeah, Siddhi, go on. That's a good question coming. Yes.
Yeah, sir. So that's coming from a personal experience actually, because this matter is still pending. I had a question.
So if it is a pending matter, I do not have any right to speak on that.
No, so actually what happened was it is not my matter, but somebody had asked me this question. They had filed a complaint which was premature, and then after when then actually the summer vacations had commenced, and after that they were late by 5-6 days. So the dismissed it by saying now I cannot condone the delay. So what remedy should a person be availing in such a scenario?
So Siddhi, for this, few things has to be carefully seen. First, it is about the validity of the check. If the check is still valid, you can present it again. You can get a cause of action again, and then you can refile it.
Right, sir.
So that's a simple logic.
And if the check is not valid, then?
No, what is not valid? What do you mean by not valid?
The expiry of the check, we've crossed the expiry, we cannot present it again. Or even if it may be that the check has been presented thrice already. So what a person should be availing in that scenario?
No, if it is a premature complaint, so then in that case, obviously you have to go to the court and tell the reasons why it was premature and now what has happened. Because in the cases of delay cases, after 30 days, definitely there is an application which lies. But where there is a premature case and such a situation has happened, then again you have to seek to the court only. You have to go to the court, the appellate court.
Right, sir.
Okay,
sir.
So with that, I think we should.
Sir, can I ask you? Sorry, can I ask you another question?
So
sir?
one question from my side also.
Okay.
What is the other speaker? Let me take the other speaker first, Shobhit.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, tell me who was asking.
Yes, sir. Can I ask Ritika this side?
Yeah, Ritika.
Yes, sir. Sir, my question is, what happens practically in courts? Like, if a person has given friendly loan of rupees 15 lakh, does he have to show the source of it, or is it compulsory for that person to have idea for that?
It's again a very good question. Generally, one who lends a loan in cash of rupees 15 lakhs should maintain, in my view, the books of accounts, should have some receipt, should have some promissory note, because the judgments which are appearing conflicting in nature. So to overcome those judgments and the judgments which are in support that yes, the loan cannot be given in cash, and if it has been given, the maintaining of account books is very much important. And at the same time, I am leaking one very important defense, though I should not, but now it's you all the young lawyers, I think you should also learn. Even if somebody has said that he has shown the amount in the ITR, please ask that person to produce his books of accounts to show that he was having this much of amount in his bank account.
Books of account. Okay, sir.
So mere mentioning in the ITR also does not absolve the complainant from his liability to substantiate his source from where he has brought this money.
Okay, sir.
So yes, Shobit, the last question.
Sir, thank you, sir. Sir, I just want to ask you one thing, sir. Sir, what if the accused, while complainant have filed a complaint, the court has issued the summons, and sir, accused is deliberately avoiding the summons, sir? So what is the remedy, sir, in that case for the complainant? So like
now that you have so many remedies, I have discussed the judgments above. That
yes, sir. That I've noted, sir. But
yeah, even I have used those remedies. The remedies are like, now you can have the WhatsApp number and you can send, and if the blue text comes, then the court has to accept it as a deemed delivery. So in that case, the effort has to be, you have to make an effort to trace either the phone number or the email. So by any of those mode, email or WhatsApp also, you can now serve upon the accused. And it would be incumbent upon the accused and come and say that the notice has not been delivered to me as I was not using this email, because people in our country aware that how to create an email, but they are not aware that how to dislodge that email.
No, sir. No, sir.
So therefore, the accused has to come and say that how he has not been using that email, he has to establish that fact.
Okay,
so,
sir.
This is an important development now. Email and WhatsApp can be used. And again, this 2020 judgment, I think it would be again adding some feathers to 138 in regard to the delivery of service, as they are saying that complainant, this drawer of the check has to also write his address and phone number in the checks.
Okay, sir.
So
thank you.
Would not be able to get resolved from this. Yes.
Sir, thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Siti, you are not audible.
So now am I? Sorry, I was on mute. Sir, I would just like a minute.
Siti, you are not audible.
Hello?
Yeah, you are audible now.
Yeah, so I was just saying that I would like to take out a minute and thank you for taking out time and throwing light on such an important topic. Although it is a very common topic, sir, but a lot of people are not aware of the basic thing. And the presentation that you presented, sir, it was very important, and the judgments, it was such a stimulating experience. So
yes,
I would really like to thank Nitesh, sir. We all are really grateful, and I would just request, please upload the presentation. We will be uploading this entire recording on the YouTube as well for you to refer it again. So thank you, sir. Thank you so much for taking out time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Siddhi, and thank you to all the listeners who have patiently listened to my webinar. It was very basic webinar, but it was very important for me to discuss the provisions into their insight with the judgments, which is generally not available anywhere, to more make the procedure easy for the young guys or the young advocates to understand that. And above that, I would also like to thank Siddhi for hosting this webinar so wonderfully. And I'm not, it's not my out of place to not to thank Akansha Batra, who is my intern, and she has taken all the pains to make this PowerPoint presentation for me. So thank you so much, Akansha, and my other team of Nitesh Mehra and Associates for providing me this opportunity to speak on this topic. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you,
you,
sir,
sir.
for giving us
Thank
an
you, sir.
Thank you
opportunity.
so much, sir.